New York's International Center of Photography celebrated Richard Avedon with a look at his fashion work from 1944 through 2000.
Richard Avedon is not only an important fashion photographer, he's an important American photographer. He really set the pace for the depiction of women in magazine photography in the post-World War II era. Dovima with elephants is probably the most famous fashion picture in existence. He said he thought he could create a kind of dream image with the right woman and the right dress, and in this case, the dress is the first dress that Yves Saint Laurent designed for Christian Dior as a very young designer.
Avedon began what would become an incredibly prolific career by apprenticing with a photographer in the Merchant Marines, taking mainly crew ID pictures.
Avedon's first 3 published fashion images were published the same year he got out of the Merchant Marine, in 1944, and that was the beginning of an extraordinary career. Avedon really made his mark photographing American fashion, and within a few years started agitating to go to Paris to shoot the haute couture collections. And that really began his fascination with Paris and his way of constructing a certain kind of Paris for an American reader. He created scenes that were narratives that were in his head. He was always looking for a slight twist. In this picture, what he's trying to show is the sleeve and the length of the sleeve. And so this is the kind of wonderful, lively picture that he gets that shows something about the French people while also showing the fashion that he needs to photograph. In the early 50s, he begins to photograph on the streets of Paris at night, and this is when he really does bring to the fore the glamour of Paris. Avedon was always a man of his time, and one of the things he picked up on was paparazzi photography. What Avedon decided to do was to base a fashion story on the troubles that Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton were having with paparazzi as they were trying to conduct their secret affair on the set of Cleopatra. What Avedon did that was very clever, though, is that he used a much smaller camera than he usually used so that he was more mobile and so that he could stage things that almost looked like they were real. In 1965, he did his last few issues for Harper's Bazaar, and in 1966 he began at Vogue magazine. He becomes very interested in working in the studio. He becomes very interested in seeing more of the body in space, in an abstract situation, not in a Parisian cafe. Avedon leaves Vogue in 1988. In 1992, he becomes the first photographer at the New Yorker magazine. After he'd been there for 3 years, he does this very long portfolio in memory of the late Mr. and Mrs. Comfort. It's a very poignant series of pictures that does bring to a certain kind of close in a very spectacular way his relationship to fashion photography.
Richard Avedon died while on assignment for The New Yorker in Texas in 2004. He was 81 years old.